All right, it's time for a leatherworking video. Everybody, I'm Richard. Welcome back to Small Caliber Arms Review, and today we're going to make a hat. We're going to make the hat from the movie Two Mules for Sister Sara. Now, it's a pretty cool hat. Very, I don't know how you want to say it, rustic or rugged styled. Not very well refined. He's kind of a drifter in this movie, if you've ever seen it. Good movie. I like it. Kind of a comedy western with a lot of adventure in it. And we're going to be using two different kinds of leather for this one. I've got some pull-up or oil tanned leather here, and this will kind of make different colors as it's folded and creased. It leaves lines in it, scratches on it and stuff. And that's kind of the way his hat looks. It's very rustic, I guess, but the brim of the hat is pretty stiff and well defined, and I just couldn't do it with this kind of leather. It's just a little too floppy. But the crown and the top will be made from this oil tan leather here. We're going to use regular veg tan for the brim of the hat, and this is about the thickest I had, and this is I think it's 9 ounce, somewhere around there. Yeah, it's about 9 ounce leather there. The other stuff is pretty thin. It is only, it's about 5 ounce. So I think this is the right color, which is great for the hat. I don't have to worry about dyeing that. I will have to dye this to match, and hopefully I can get it to come out pretty good. I've got some dark browns there, so I think it'll match up okay anyways. And this is not going to be stiffened up any. It needs to be a little bit floppy too. Now the pattern I've got here is based on one that I bought before, and that's this one, which is pretty similar to the style of hat that he wore in there. This is more of a a flared top crown on this one, and it does fit, although when I bought this pattern it did not fit, and it was the largest one that Dieselpunk.ro has available. Now he does a lot of leather stuff that is well, steampunk kind of stuff, and I like to do the western kind of stuff, and I made this one for my my S.C.A.R persona, Dick Silver. So instead of the little vials in there, I put bullets in it. No hat band, at least not this type of hat band, and no wire in the brim on the Clint Eastwood hat. But the brim is about the right size on this, and the height and the shape of the crown is pretty similar to what Clint Eastwood wore in the movie. And we're going to have to modify the pattern a little bit. I'm going to have to make it bigger to fit my nugget. And I think the brim is going to be just fine, although I will have to make that slightly larger because the crown is going to have to be slightly larger to fit me. Now, Tony sells his patterns on his, I believe it's still on his Etsy store. It's been a few years since I bought this pattern here, and it's been a great pattern. I just have to modify it to fit me and to just a starting point for the Two Mules for Sister Sara Hogan hat. So I'm going to get started on making up a pattern for it, and then we're going to go from there. I always recommend when you're making or modifying a pattern, go ahead and do it in paper first, because it's a whole lot cheaper to screw up on paper than it is to screw up on leather. Now there's only 3 pieces of leather for this. There's the brim, there's the crown, and there's the top. And actually it would probably help out a little bit more to, if you're going to make hats, especially for yourself, is to make a cardboard template of your head, because people wear different sizes, they got different shaped heads. I wear a pretty large hat because I actually wear a 7 3/4 long oval. So usually when I do find a 7 3/4, if on the rare occasion I find one, I still have to stretch it out a little bit because I wear a long oval, and it just 7 3/4 long oval fits great. A 7 7/8 will fit without too much modification. It just gives you a little bit of room to do the stretching if you need to. You get a 7 3/4, and then you want to modify it to a 7 3/4 long oval. You'll stretch the front and the back, but the sides will pull in. So you're making a long oval. Now, back in the day, they had some pretty funky contraptions they would put on your head to see what fit and what didn't. And this does not fit the greatest. I could probably still take a little bit out of the front and the back there. I think the sides are great. I may do a little more trimming on this thing to get it to fit me a little bit better. And like I said, cardboard will be a little bit better because it's stiffer and you can actually, you know, kind of feel things out. If you can get somebody to trace around your head for you, it'd be even better. Right now, that is tight. Tighter than Dick Silver's hatband. Yeah, I need to take some off the front and the back. Because even though I made this a little bit bigger than the black hat I have there, it's going to be made of a thicker material, so it's going to take up some room. So I really need to make it a little bit bigger. Now the piece I'm putting on the inside for the crown part is only 5 ounce. So it's not going to take up a whole lot more room, but it will take up some. Okay, I'm getting a little bit closer. I trimmed the center hole out a little bit more. The top piece, I'm going to leave the same size. On the original hat, the top piece sat on the outside and the crown folded up and the top piece was sewn on the outside of that. On Hogan's hat in Two Mules for Sister Sara, it's just the opposite. It goes on the inside and the top folds over onto it. So I did make the crown just a little bit taller. And one of the things I need to do, and there's also an overlap where in the original hat the seam butted up there. On Clint Eastwood's hat there's an overlap there. So I got to make sure that this is going to fit. It's a little snug, but it does fit okay. And like I said, it's a whole lot easier to figure it out on paper than it is to, you know, screw up on the leather. I might actually have to make this just a hair smaller because it needs to be able to be kind of flat and the top piece needs to roll over on top of it. Now this is just a little bit bigger than that, so maybe I need to trim this up the same size as this part. It's not going to be much, but it will be some. Now I did put lines on there marking the front and the back on here too. Yeah, I think that'll probably be just about right. And it's, like I said, it's not much. Now this will be the first time of me making a hat from my own pattern. So it's going to be a learning experience for me. Oh, that was actually quite a bit of difference on there. And that's probably about right. As I was looking at the, when I put this inside of the crown part there, I did notice it is quite a bit of excess material in there. All right, that should fit better inside of here now. Oh yeah, definitely a lot nicer. This fits on my head-ish. Now one of the things I got to do is I got to establish all my punch holes because I like to pre-punch everything I'm doing on the leather. So what I will do is I will use these. These are 2mm. I'm going to do a saddle stitch all the way around it. So what I need to establish the overlap I'm going to have on there. And I think it's just going to be about, I think 1/4 of an inch will be good enough for the overlap. Yeah, 1/4 inch will be good. And then I need to take and put all these punch marks all the way down there. Then I need to have the same number of punch marks on the brim as I will have on the crown, because each one of those holes has to have a corresponding hole on there. If I don't get it quite right, I might have to put a couple extras in there. Not a big deal. Do them toward the back, that way the hat band that's in there is kind of laced through it. So there's a blood knot at the back that holds it together, and if I screw up any stitches, I'll put them in the back there. That way I can hide it. Like I said, it's not a highly refined hat anyways. I'm going to get some punch marks laid out on here. All right, I got all 152 of my holes punched in there, so now got to get this thing cut out. Now I don't have to worry about burnishing the edges of this because his hat was not slicked up. All right, get that inside cut out and try not to slip and cut through some of the holes there. Okay, there's that part of it. Let's try it on. Oh, I think it's going to be a little tight, even though I did make it bigger. So there'll probably be some stretching involved in this thing. Okay, I got my pieces cut out of the oil tan stuff. So now I've got a bunch more holes to punch again. Whole lot of them this time. Now this is, I did not pick out the best spots of it. This is a little scuffed up, scratched up and stuff, and that's the way I want the hat to be. And then I got to punch all those holes in there. And this is going to get sewn all the way around on top of that. And hopefully it comes out like it's supposed to. I like the stuff. I actually bought this to do a possibles bag, kind of like this or the one behind it there. And it's a nice soft leather, and it really would make great bags. And I got this great big piece of it from Weaver when I went up there one day. Went through the warehouse, and they have a section there where they have some, I don't know if it was returns or stuff or whatever, but you can find some great pieces in there. I highly recommend Weaver Leather. And I have an affiliate link down in the description too. Wink, wink. All right, more hole punching. Okay, I've got all my pieces cut out, and I'm going to start stitching. The first thing I'm going to stitch together is the two ends of this where it overlaps. If I remember correctly, in this screenshot, the right side goes over top of the left side. It just overlaps there. So that's what I'm going to do. And I am going to saddle stitch this. And I got my length of thread cut out here. Hopefully that'll be enough. It's been a while since I've done this, and I may be off a little bit. And this is kind of a hard piece to hold. First of all, it's not stiff leather, it's kind of floppy, so. It can be a little bit of a pain. Not an easy one to wrestle with. And I guess I can try this on now, see if it fits. Oh, that's a little snug right there. Well, I guess I made a kufi, huh? Old West kufi. I think that's how you pronounce it. Different type of hat. Okay, before I get going too much more on the stitching, I need to get this thing dyed so it's got a little time to dry. The next part I'm going to stitch together is going to be the crown to the top, and then will be the brim to the bottom of the crown. So we're going to go ahead and use some Phoebing's Light Brown Pro dye, which is usually what this ends up being like, so that should be pretty darn close. And I'm just going to put it on with a wool piece here. And the bottom side is really going to soak in the dye. I don't have much left in this bottle, but I do have another full bottle. Now normally when I'm making a holster or something, I would go ahead and bevel the edges and then dye it. But this is not going to get any beveled edges on it. It's just going to get the raw edges on it because that's just the way the hat looks to me anyways. This is my interpretation of the hat. I don't have a pattern. I'm just going off of watching the movie a few times and a bunch of screenshots. All right, now I got to make sure I get those edges because they will be able to be seen. All right, this part should go a little nicer. All right, I'll leave that to dry, and it's probably going to dry considerably lighter than what it is there, but I have a cure for that too, just in case it does. I can hit it with some of the antiquing, or probably just the some of the other stuff I got in there. What is it? The Atom Balm, Atom Wax, Leather Balm with Atom Wax. I got some of that, and that will darken it up some too. All right, we'll get that drying off to the side somewhere and then finish sewing the crown onto the top. All right, that was a fail. Not completely a fail. That was a learning experience. I got just a little bit too much. Well, actually, I've got not enough material for the top there. I need to cut out a bigger piece because I just did not have, and I knew this going into it, but I thought I could fudge it a little bit. I've got some extra material here that I just cannot squeeze down to that distance right there. It's way too much here, not enough there. So what I need to do is my centerpiece needs to be a little bit bigger diameter. I'm not sure how much. I'm going to estimate. I think I had 67 holes here, and in the top piece I had 61. So it needs to be about 14 holes bigger, but all the way around. So what I am going to do, what I hate doing, is the outside piece is still okay. I am going to pull all these threads out, which is no fun. I've had to do it before, so I guess it's not the end of the world. Okay, cut out a new one. It's a little rougher part, but it's out of that same scrap that I cut this one out of. And I got it within 2 holes. That's better than like 7 or 8 holes that I had it within. So, I'm going to try this again. And I just didn't do any math or anything. I just cut it. Made the next one just a little bit bigger. And I will give it another try. Now, I did go back up, took a little break, and looked at some of the screenshots I got from the movie, and it is a really rough looking hat. I mean, there is nothing refined about it whatsoever. So if this doesn't turn out the prettiest, I'm okay with that because it'll look more like the movie hat. Okay, I did have enough thread to do the whole thing. I was a little worried about that. And here is the top part of it. This gets crushed in there a little bit. Now, if you'll look at his hat, it is not the prettiest seams up at the top, which is cool because neither is mine. And this may take a little bit of shaping, maybe a little bit of hammering and stuff to get it where it needs to be, to get it to stay there anyways. But I think it's pretty close to the movie one. Yeah, I may have to do a little tweaking, hammering and all that kind of stuff on it. But I think it's pretty good. At least this part of it is anyways. Maybe I should have used a different piece of leather for that top piece, but it's all right. Now I got to get the other part and then sew that on there, and I think all my holes are correct on that one. Now the color is not right yet, that's for sure. It's way too light, so it will need to be darkened up a bit, quite a bit really, because I want these two to look the same. And then that's going to go inside there, and it's going to kind of curl this up some. Now there is a hat band on his hat too, and I'll put that in after I get the top part of it sewn on there. Now it is not a hat band that goes around the outside. It got slots cut in it, and it's laced through there. So I will be using a very thin leather for that. Now this being veg tanned, it will shape. So I already got that curled up a little bit there. And it will be all right, I think. But I got to work on that dye, and then I'm going to have to let it sit up and dry and everything first. All right, so everything's had time to dry out, and I put these clips on here to hopefully get it to stay in its shape, and that did pretty good. But this is way too light. It's got to be the same color as this. Now, I went back and watched one of my other videos of the Crossfire Trail holster I did for the 1872 open top. And what I did on that was I used this exact same leather, probably the same piece of leather too, if I'm not mistaken. But I used the same dye on it, and I put neat's foot oil on it. And the neat's foot oil caused it to be a lot darker, and not a real even darkness, which is okay because it needs to be like that. So I'm going to go ahead and try this, because that is a technique I discovered what the results are if I do it that way. So neat's foot oil, I don't have to worry about getting it on my hands. It will wash off. This looks like it may have gotten a little cold. Whoa. Let's start on the back side and rub it in there. This will also help preserve it some too. Now I do have a walnut dye that I made, and it's a nice dark dye. And I sent a picture of this to Santee of Arizona Ghostriders, and I showed it, one of the in-progress pictures. And he said, hey, why don't you use that walnut dye you made? Which is a great idea, except that I left the container outside. It's been there for a while, long story, but it's froze right now, and so I'm not going to be able to use it. But like I said, I went back and watched the video of the 1872, the Mexican loop holster up there, and it come out about the colors I want. So I'm going to work this in here really, really well, and hopefully it will get that shade of brown that I want too. Now it looks like for some reason I've got some kind of splash on here or something, but like I said, it's not the perfect brand new store-bought hat. So if it's got marks on it and little discolorations, it's probably going to be just fine. And then I'm going to let this dry for quite a while. I'm going to try me a little experiment too, because this may dye or dry to a little different sheen than the top. So I've got a piece of this scrap here, and I'm going to put a little bit of that on there just to see how it's going to dry, and see if I may have to do both of them just to get them to match up a little better. That actually made it quite a bit darker. I only put it on part of it there, but I'm going to let that sit to the side and dry up while I continue to work some more of this Neatsfoot oil into the brim. Okay, so I hit it with the Phoebing's Neatsfoot oil, and I had to do several coats on it to get it to be as dark or close to the same shade of brown as the crown is on there. Now it's more even brown, but I think I'll be able to take care of that this spring when everything thaws out, and maybe rub some dirt on it. That always makes it better. Let me get all this stuff cleaned up, then I'm going to get that crown sewn to this, and then I'm going to start cutting the slits in there for the hat band that goes around it. All right, now I did take a little scrap of this oil tan leather here and put a little bit of the Phoebing's Neatsfoot oil on there, and it made it, it's going to be hard for you to see, it's pretty hard for me to see. It did make it slightly darker, a little closer to this color right here, but I'm not going to mess with that right now. I'm going to get this thing sewn together. And I'm going to go about, I would say about 3 or 4 times the distance around here with my thread. To make sure that I have enough, and maybe a little bit more. Thread's pretty cheap. It's a pain to have to, you know, splice it together when you're doing this. And I am going to do a saddle stitch all the way around it, so I'm going to get my 2 needles threaded up on here and probably pull about 2 feet through there. Maybe we'll go 3. And that'll just allow me to, it'll be just a little bit easier to handle instead of fighting a, you know, 7 or 8 foot piece of thread through there. I technically only have to wrestle with, let's see, there's my 2 needles and about 6 feet roughly. So I got about 12 feet of thread on there total. So I'm going to get this thing stitched up, and this is going to take a while, so I've got me a cup of coffee, and I'm just going to do a little relaxing and stitching. I'm going to start at the back, go all the way around, and hopefully finish up at the back, and hopefully that will give me, if I've got any mistakes, I can bury them in the back there. All right, I am slightly over halfway around, and I'm hoping that I've got enough thread there. I thought I did, but I'm starting to wonder now. Now, once it gets to this point, actually a little bit before I got to this point, it started to get a lot easier, because now the brim is actually holding the hat up. And it's tough to get the needle through there. You got to kind of work it through one piece and find the hole on the other side of the other piece. But I found that when you pull that thread up, and then you need a little bit of manual dexterity, you can wiggle that needle around and pull it through. Now, another thing I've been doing is about every 4th stitch, third or fourth, somewhere around there. I have been tying a knot in my thread just to keep it from loosening up as I go, because it's I'm kind of fighting two pieces of leather here. So I just take and loop that one through there twice and then give it a good snug pull, and it just kind of ties a little knot inside there. It's not visible, it's kind of between the two layers of thread of leather, and like I said, it's just a little extra insurance so that it doesn't pull apart while I'm sewing. Once I get it all in there, it should be just fine. But it's definitely allows me to pick up the pace a little bit now that everything is pretty well lined up and it's all supporting itself. I got pretty darn lucky on this one. I had just enough thread to make it around there and give me a couple back stitches too. So that worked out just right. Tie me a couple half hitches on there, square knot, half hitch one way, half hitch the other way, and yeah, that worked out just right. Wish I would have had just a little bit more thread, but as long as I didn't have to add any to it. I like to melt the ends of this. This is a nylon thread or polyester. Either way, it's a synthetic. And melt the ends of it. Forms a little ball on there so that it won't fray because it's braided, and it shouldn't pull out either because that little melted knot on the end there. All right, the moment of truth. Yeah, it's going to need some stretching. And it's going to need some forming of different kinds. But that is, so far, I still got to do the hat band on there. Now, the hat band on his hat is laced through the hat. And it looks like there are 12 stitches in it, I guess you'd say. So on this, I do need to do some math to figure out how far I'm going to space them. We've got 24.5 inches around there. So 12 looks like about one every inch or so. A stitch, a space, a stitch, a space. So 24.5 inches should work out just right. And I will get those laid out, and then I will get the slots cut in there. Now the first one, the first slot looks like it's right at the center of his face, and then it goes over to one direction. I think it goes to his left. So that's what I'll do. I'll put one slot right in the middle, go over an inch, skip an inch, another slot, inch, slot, until I get it laced all the way around there. And I think, let's see, my tape here is just over 3/4 of an inch wide, and that looks a little bit wide. I think his hat band is, I'm just guessing, I'm going to say about a 1/2 inch wide. So I'm going to have to cut 1/2 inch slots in there, and I'll have to mark everything out. The nice thing about this type of leather is it's both good and bad. You can put marks on it and they're easy to see. The problem is I don't want to leave really bad marks on it. All right, that should work out just about right. Now I need to get me a piece of veg tan, 1/2 inch wide, cut out so I can slide it through there, and I need to get it cut out long enough to do that. So I said that was 24 inches around there. It needs to be about, we'll go 32 inches long, and it needs to be really, really thin too because it's got a lace through there. And I think I'm going to put it rough side out because the hat band on his hat looks like it's kind of rough on the outside of it. At least the little pieces you can see. And then we'll do a blood knot in the back of it. All right, this may work out even better. When I said I went to Weaver Leather and I picked up scraps and stuff, or remnants or whatever they were, returns, I realized I had this piece of goat skin in here, and I think it was a return because it had 2 holes in it. Now this is nice and thin and is about the right color, so I may just put the outside. Yeah, there's a big hole in it right there, and that's why somebody returned it. And one right there, and I'm sure that's probably where the legs were, who knows. But I need a piece of this nice and straight and about 32 inches long. And I think that'll work out pretty good. Forgot I even had this. All right, that's a little more than 32 inches. It's 33, but that'll be plenty enough to get laced through there. I've got some lacing needles. Now, these are for obviously doing lace, and this is quite a bit wider, so I've got a little bit of extra on there. I will have to cut my pieces down some. Because that's going to be hard to stuff that through those slots in there. So these little lacing needles have holes in them and some little prongs on them, and you open that up. There we go. You can open that up and stick that in there and then squeeze it on there, and those 2 little prongs will poke through there, so it'll grip pretty tight. There we go. And you want to trim these up just a little bit so that you don't get hung up in there. All right, that should make it a whole lot easier. And I want to put the smooth side out now because I'm not using veg tan. Now that's a whole lot easier to pull through there. All right, now I got to do a blood knot. And a blood knot is pretty easy to do. I just got to cut a slot in here and then run this through there and then cut a slot in the other one and run it through there. Now I've got to cut a slot in here. And run this one through it. I can reach through here. Grab that and pull it through. And we can do one more. We'll do one more. Cut a slot in here. You can keep on doing this as many times as you want, but I think that'll be good right there. I don't know how many times his goes through there, but it creates this little pattern right here, which is called a blood knot. And then what we'll do, get this needle off of here, is we'll go ahead and trim the ends of these, and usually they're trimmed kind of at an angle. We'll kind of match them up a little bit, and usually one is a little longer than the other. And then there's the blood knot. All right, there it is. There is my version of the hat that Clint Eastwood wore in the movie Two Mules for Sister Sara. We'll try it on and see how it fits me. And not terrible, I don't guess. I can't see the top of the crown there, but that's kind of like the hat that he had in the movie Two Mules for Sister Sara. Hogan, he was a mercenary, and he was out for himself to make a little bit of money. And a really cool movie. If you get a chance to watch it, go for it. But this is my version of the hat. Now, next thing I got to do is make it look more like his, but I'm going to have to wait till the ground thaws out and I can get some dirt to rub all over this thing and make it look more authentic. It's a little glossier on the brim than it is on the crown and the top, and I probably could have made it just a little bit taller on the crown because, like I said, I've got a really big head. But that's my version of the hat right there. Anyways, thanks for watching Small Caliber Arms Review. If you could, reach up here and hit this button to check out some of my other videos. Hit this little round one over here to subscribe if you haven't already. And thanks for watching.